Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rounds Review Podcast, the preview show when it's match day for Derby County. Go to Ipswich Town on Saturday for what could be a humdinger of a match. And who better to discuss Ipswich Town and all about the club and where they've been and where they are now is Adam Wilkin. Adam Wilkin, who oversees ITFCData. Good afternoon, Adam. How are we?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Pleasure to be here.
No, pleasure to have you. Thank you very much. And just a pretty much bit more of an insight. And Adam is also a pundit on Football League World and also joined the Blue Monday team to provide tactical support and analysis on Ipswich Town. So I think we have the ultimate expert of all Ipswich Town and we can expect on Saturday. So Adam, let's go back a couple of years to when you were in the Championship. We know what happened last year, and we'll touch briefly on the Premiership. But 23-24, you came second, 96 points. Ultimately a year that no one expected, and you were sort of the dark horse that came from nowhere, and deserved the accolade you got. How has Ipswich Town changed from that year?
I think the momentum started building in that League One season. Beforehand, the new owners were very ambitious when they came in, and we were very much building a championship ready squad when we were in League One. I think when we went up, the expectations were fairly high, and definitely survival was thought to be on the cards, maybe like a mid-table finish. But no one thought we'd do as well as we did. And I think momentum, the fact that we kept a strong core of the playing group together that knew Kieran McKenna's tactics, that were familiar with his style of play, and a little bit of the fact that we were kind of an unknown quantity within the division, um, allowed us to just go on an incredible run. There was a bit of a dodgy patch over December when injuries hit a bit, but towards the end of the season, became an unstoppable machine towards the end. Um, but yeah, it definitely came as a surprise.
Do you think that the style of football that we'll see this Saturday is any different to that football that was so great to watch in that promotion year? Is it still the same tactically and the same ethos that Kieran McKenna has?
I think at the moment, and this could potentially be the causes of some of our struggles in the first three games, a lot of the players there from that League One Championship season are leaving or wanting to go because when we went up into the Premier League, we brought in new players. A few stayed in the side, but a lot became the kind of backup players in the squad or the squad players, and they were happy to do that in the Premier League. But when we've come down, they're either wanting to move on for more consistent football. In Cameron Burgess's perspective, left on a free transfer to go to Swansea. A few were Premier League level and have wanted to go back up to the Premier League. Liam Delap was obviously the obvious one. Nathan Broadhead has moved on to Wrexham, which has hurt a lot of fans. He was a fan favourite. Um, so I think the core of that squad that took us up is not there anymore. And we've got a lot of players who played in the Premier League but weren't necessarily part of that style. And in pre-season, there's been a bit of a shift away from the possession-based passing football that those players were used to, compared to the more pragmatic approach we took in the Premier League to try and get points. We signed a lot of Championship All Stars when we were in the Premier League, who are all very good in their positions and at their former clubs, but they've one of the criticisms this year is they've not really fit into McKenna's old plan. So he's kind of got this new plan that's a bit less possession based, a bit more about pressing from the front, with wingers kind of attacking the space and doing a bit more individual talent with Jack Clark and Jaden Philogene, neither of whom were in that championship promotion side. And that's not really paying off yet. So it feels like we've kind of got two groups of players within the squad now. One that's more suited to this new style, and then you've still got players like Connor Chaplin, Wes Burns, who's out injured at the moment, but those players who are more suited to the old style. So it's very interesting to see if he can gel those different units together this year.
Do you think that it was too soon to go in the Premier League? I know it's a really daft question. It's something that obviously we all want and dream of, but now you've been there and seen it and come back down. tell us Derby fans the reality of the gap between sort of getting promotion and spending a year. What was it really? Made your eyes very sore, and it was never really close to surviving. Sort of tell us briefly what you thought about the Premier League and where you think the Championship club's reality is to where they want to be.
Yeah, I think for Ipswich in particular, because a lot of the squad was kept together from the League One season, it wasn't just the jump from the Championship into the Premier League. It was almost a jump from League One to the Premier League, like very, very quickly. A lot of the players that we had making their Premier League debuts had spent the vast majority of their career in the lower ends of the Championship, or some had only spent time in League One and then only in the Championship with Ipswich Town themselves. It's been interesting to see how the promoted clubs have gone about it this season. We very much bought from the UK markets, and we signed a lot of players who Jacob Greaves was in the Championship Team of the Year. Jack Clark obviously had a phenomenal season with Sunderland. We were after Jaden Philogene, who'd had a good period on loan with Hull. Same with Liam Delap, had done okay at Hull. So we kind of signed a lot of players who we knew were good players within the Championship and hoped that some of those would step up to the Premier League. I think where we tried to recruit experience, it's very hard to get that as a promoted Championship club. I think that is the difference. You can buy the kind of 15, 20 million pound players, but getting someone with Premier League experience, it's either going to be someone potentially on high wages who has been released, or someone coming towards the end of their career, or like we had with Calvin Phillips, someone who hasn't got the best fitness record. And I think we were hit with injuries quite a lot, especially in that midfield department where Calvin Phillips wasn't fully up to speed a lot of the time. Jens Kajust, who's returned on loan this season, had knee issues that had to be managed the entire time. And that made it tricky. What also didn't help is our first two games were Liverpool and Manchester City, which and momentum in football is a big thing, I think, and having those has made it a tough start. And then every point is a prisoner, and like every game is a fight there. And it was clear to see. I don't think we were necessarily blown away or outperformed massively in any of the games there, which almost made things worse because I went into every game and you'd come back from another defeat and be like, actually, we were kind of competitive there. It was just that small moment of either Premier League class or someone switching off, like just for a split second, which doesn't necessarily get punished in the Championship. But in the Premier League, switch off once and twice and you're 2-0 down, and then it's very hard to get back into the game. I feel like that was the biggest difference that I saw.
I think also, just to add to that, that it's staggering to think you only actually lost 2 games less than Spurs. Um, if you could have converted, 3 or 4 of those 10 draws
Yeah.
into wins, you'd have been there or there about survival. So you wasn't a million miles off. And, I think we're all rooting for you, certainly to sort of break that horrible tradition of three coming straight back down.
Yeah.
But it sort of brings us nicely into this season and Kieran McKenna and Ipswich Town. Do you think you've learnt a lot from that, or really have you sort of left it to history and we start again?
I think it's a bit of both. The players will have developed from that experience, and actually learn from kind of the Premier League level. But at the same time, I think it's very hard to get out of a kind of rut, and it won't have been good for them psychologically or mentally to have been losing that many games, because I don't think any human likes losing in general. And I think that is maybe the culture that we'd like to have changed a bit earlier on in these 3 games. So we've still only won 1 game at Portman Road this calendar year, and that was against Bristol Rovers in the FA Cup. So looking ahead to the game on Saturday, I think getting that win is kind of a big psychological thing to do sooner rather than later. I don't think we're in a position where we have to be worried about doing another Luton, but it's still important to get that win. fairly quickly.
It is, and we're in the same situation, which we'll come to about Derby later in the show. Just to get a point on the board was a huge relief for Derby last week, because at the moment, obviously, our squad is back to bare bones as it was this time. Sorry, at the end of last season. So, well, we'll talk about your transfers in and outs, and there's been a lot of activity of loans going out, loans going in, signings going out, signings going in. I think ins and outs is 11 either side. Are you happy with the activity so far, or are you a bit underwhelmed? But how do you feel Kieran McKenna's building for this season?
I think when we got relegated, I think we've made a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, good championship level signings when we were in the Premier League. And I was hoping for probably 2, 3, maybe 4 quality additions. I feel like we've lost more players than I expected. So Axel Tuanzebe and Cameron Burgess both had contracts due up and they left. Liam Delap was one that we always knew was going to leave. Mari Hutchinson was a bit on the fence, but then after his England under-21 performance, I think that then always looked likely that he was going to leave to join a Premier League club. We put faith in George Hurst to be our main striker. We gave him the number 9 shirt, so it was clear that we backed him to do that. He scored 1 goal so far. He looked very good in pre-season, but hasn't really backed that number 9 shirt up in the 3 league games so far. So that striker department still needs strengthening, and it was very clear that our midfield department would still need strengthening. And in terms of transfers, I don't think we've really done that. In terms of just the depth, I really like Azor Matasiwa, who we've signed from Rennes. He's going to take time to settle, and hopefully bringing Jens Kjust back on loan, who he played with under Will Still at Rem, will help that kind of midfield partnership. But yeah, we're still very much building partnerships within the squad. I'm quite happy that we've not lost key players like Leif Davis. I think he's going to have a lot to say this season. It's more a case of the players that we signed last year not getting up to speed yet. And yeah, that midfield strengthening has become a bit of a circus. We've been in and out for Hayden Hackney for what seems like about 2 months now. Whether that will eventually get over the line or not, who knows? He'd be a quality addition, but it seems like he's holding out for the Premier League. And yeah, now it seems like we're very much on the C, D, E list of targets, which is a little bit worrying from a transfer perspective.
No, I understand that. And would you say that Kieran McKenna thinks he's got a strong enough core, provided he can keep players? Because obviously, I always say the biggest problem with teams coming down from the Premier League is that they get pillaged in the last week of the window. They'll have a really good start. I remember Ward Prowse, for example, when Southampton went back down, he had a brilliant start to the Championship and was firing goals, and all of a sudden, bang, Southampton were ripped apart. Do you see Ipswich Town having that potential battle again going into the last week of the transfer window, or do you believe that you'll pretty much stick to what you have with a few more additions?
I think we've been quite lucky in terms of, I think, all of the outgoings that have now happened in terms of key players or players that would have been key in McKenna's plans at the start of the summer have probably happened. If there's going to be outgoings now, there'll be more of the squad players. Ali Al-Hamadi, who is backup striker, might have to leave if we bring another striker in. One of Cameron Humphreys, probably Cameron Humphreys, might go out on loan again if we bring another midfielder in. And then Connor Townsend, our backup left back, got a season-ending injury in one of the pre-friendlies. So we've been linked with a few right backs, interestingly. So maybe there's some kind of thought that either Ashley Young or Ben Johnson will play left back going forward. So yeah, I think McKenna will be happy with the squad that he's got. I think his biggest challenge now is almost rebuilding and refitting his tactical plan to fit the players that are in the building, because the profiles of those players in kind of, especially the attacking roles, we've got a lot to attack down the left-hand side. Jaden Philogene loves to be a left winger. Jack Clark loves to be wide on the left. Leif Davis loves to be wide on the left. So there's a lot of congestion down that side, and it will be finding the formation and the style that suits the new players that I think will be his biggest challenge now.
Tell us a little bit about your start in the season, because looking at the fixtures, I think a lot of Derby fans would not want to know a little bit about Birmingham. Obviously, you got a draw there, and obviously then Southampton. Two really big games to start off the season. And then so far, the surprise package, Preston, who I don't think will maintain that, so I'm not worried about them. Tell us about your feelings to those results, because the Birmingham one wasn't a surprise to me, because obviously they've got that momentum, as you said at the start of the show. Southampton will always be a quality side under Will Still, and then Preston got a real good shoe in from their manager at the end of last season. How were Birmingham? They're the one club I'd be intrigued to sort of find out a bit more from your perspective as an Ipswich fan.
Yeah, I was looking at our first 5 fixtures, because we've got obviously yourselves and then Sheffield United coming up. And at the beginning of the season, I was thinking I'd probably be happy with 9 points from that, because I felt that Birmingham and Southampton would both be very tough games. Obviously, Birmingham have kept quite a few of their players together, but then they've also spent big in the transfer market. I think they've made some really quality additions, but then the core of their team is pretty stable. So Paik and Iwata in midfield were incredibly impressive at Knighthead Park, as it's now labelled.
Don't go there. I hate new stadium names. I mean, you can tell by the face I'm old school.
Yeah,
It's always St Andrews to me.
St Andrews, yeah. They dominated the midfield. Obviously, Jay Stansfield has played in the Championship and done well in the Championship before. So they've very much got a good Championship squad. And I think what was notable for me compared to where we were at that stage of the season is they did seem to have patterns of play. They did know when to press, when to play the ball, like how to get it in. And yeah, I was very impressed with Birmingham, and think they should probably end up top 6 based on that performance. Yeah, they've got quite good strength in depth as well, I think, now with the players that they've brought in. And I can't see too many weaknesses in their squad at all. So yeah, they'll prove to be a tough team, and especially at St Andrews, a tough place to go. I think there was 30, 36, 37 fouls in that game as well, which made it a bit hard to judge. The referee was very whistle happy, but I think that shows the sort of side they are as well. They definitely got stuck in, and are a very aggressive team off the ball. And that is something that you've got to do in the Championship. And the more possession-based teams definitely won't fancy going there, and they'll be able to battle with the more defensive, physical teams as well. So I think they've got everything there set up to be a success this year.
It was interesting because I noticed, obviously, you do data analysis yourself, and I noticed that actually Southampton had more possession than you, and pretty much across all the stats, they had better possession, more passing. Yet, ironically, you go to Preston and absolutely dominate them in every stat and get beaten. What's the difference between those two fixtures? Because that was really the classic chalk and cheese.
Yeah, I think Southampton was a very open game. Being at Portman Road, we were a lot more aggressive in terms of trying to win the ball back high up the pitch, and we got the early goal in that one, which a lot of the time leads for teams to then drop off. But I thought we performed very well against Southampton. They equalised with a nice piece of play, but then towards the end of the game, if there was one team that was going to win, despite them having more possession, I did feel like it was going to be us in that. They're in a very similar place in terms of transfers as well, where Aaron Ramsdale left on loan quite late, and they had Tyler Dibling was in the squad for them then. He's now moved to Everton. I think Mateus Fernandes is still rumoured to be going to West Ham. So it must be hard for those 3 relegated sides to kind of know whether you're coming or going with the transfer window still open and pick a settled 11. But they're always kind of quite open games with Southampton. Both teams will look to get on the ball, and both teams try to attack quite quickly. And it makes for more of an open game, given where they've come from. Preston, I think it would have been a different game if we hadn't conceded the penalty as early on. But yeah, when you concede a goal early against a team playing a back 5, 3 in midfield, and 2 big lump type of strikers, and not in a negative way, Osmajic and Smith did their jobs and performed their roles to perfection. It's always then going to be a battle, and that's something that we have struggled with both in the last championship season and when we were in League One, and maybe something that we might face more of this time as a more known quantity. Teams trying to get that early goal, sitting deep, letting us have the ball, either 2 banks of 4 or a bank of 5 and a bank of 3, and making us play through them. Which, it was a frustrating game to watch up there, because we just weren't moving the ball quick enough. We weren't trying to play through the lines. Everyone's passing was just not finding the right target, or just a couple of yards behind where it should have been. Like, you could just tell it was one of those days where things weren't clicking. And I'd say that if you can get an early goal, that's probably the way to beat us at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at your current squad, and I'll come to those in a minute. But I'm just having a look at your backroom staff, and I tell you what, I wouldn't like to meet any of your backroom staff down a dark alley. Martin Peart looks seriously angry. Rennie Gilmartin, it looks like a wrestler, and then you've got Sonny Aluko and Mark Hudson. I'm thinking, what a tag team that would be! Wow. So I digress. We'll go back to the here and now and your squad, and there's some seriously big names still in there that everybody knows. Sammy Smodics, Chubap Khan, Jack Clark, like I said, George Hurst, Connor Chaplin. They just reel off the tongue, more and more of them as I see them. Who's your player to watch? If you can name one player who you really think at the moment is grabbing that Ipswich Town shirt and running with it and will lead you to the promised land, who would you put your badge on?
Yeah, this is actually a tough one right now. I think a lot was talked about at the beginning of the season when everyone was making us promotion favourites about that attacking lineup, with now 2 championship Golden Boot winners, Jack Clark, who was ridiculously good in the championship last time, Jayden Philogene, and then even from our promotion season, Connor Chaplin scored loads, George Hurst contributed. Of the attacking ones, I'd say Sammy Smodics has probably been the best. In terms of standout performance for us across the first 3 games, it's very hard. The Blue Monday team, we have a chat where we kind of do player ratings, and no one's scored higher than a 6 yet.
Wow.
In terms of our opinions, Dara O'Shea is the top of that, and the top in my opinion. He's just a solid, dependable defender. But yeah, in terms of threats, despite having all of that firepower, it struggled to click as a front 4 in the setup that we've had it so far. But Smodics has probably looked the best. He's not scored yet, but he hit the post against Southampton, and he's had a couple of other big chances, and I'm sure that first goal will come. And when it does, I think he could get a lot of goals this year.
I noticed you had Elkan Baggett, and I can't think of another Indonesian player in the championship. Is he a regular, or is he more of a squad player? I'll be honest with you, it's a name that I've never come across before.
He spent last season out on loan at Blackpool. He's always in and around the squad in the pre-seasons. In our championship promotion season, he played a couple, mainly cup games, and was around the squad. And then last season, we decided to get him some game time and loan him out. This season, he's very much our fifth choice central defender.
Yeah.
But he has renewed his contract a week or two ago. And interestingly, that post got about 100,000 likes on Instagram because he's got a massive Indonesian following.
Yeah.
So we must do. He's probably worth that contract just for shirt sales alone. But yeah, in terms of breaking into the squad, I don't think you'll be seeing much of him in the Championship this year. He's more likely he'll go out on loan.
And that was the question I was going to ask. And is it more of a this sounds really bad towards the guy's ability, but is it more commercially beneficial to Ipswich Town to have them than obviously the player? And I think you've sort of potentially answered that the Far East Asian market has got shirt sales written all over it, and they love someone to sort of strive to and sort of look up to. So let's go on to your thoughts of the Rams and Derby County. Obviously, you saw us. We haven't played each other for a while, and we've always had some good tussles at Portman Road. And I love going to Portman Road. It's still one of the most traditional football grounds you'll ever meet. The fact that, if I still remember rightly, the stands are below the level of the pitch at the front and what have you. I don't know if that's still the case.
Yeah.
And you've still got. I always remember the digressing. You had a long hamburger grill. Must have been about 30 foot long. And I remember these two old dears, bless them. There was no, there was no sort of menu. It was just burgers straight across this wonderful stainless steel tray as such. Anyway, I digress. Tell us about your thoughts of Derby County. They've obviously their 11th signing has come through the door today, so people will know when we're recording this. In Travis from Blackburn. Do you see Derby as a dark horse? The start has been pretty poor, but we've literally had no meat on the bones as such to select. What's your thoughts of the Rams?
I think looking at it at the start of the season, John Eustace is clearly a manager that has had success in the Championship, and I think did very well to stabilise the ship and steer it away from relegation last year. So I think I was probably thinking kind of again a season of stabilisation, decent additions. Carlton Morris has already proved his worth with 3 goals so far. We were linked with Abui Adams.
You still are, apparently.
Early on in the season, who's played a bit of a different role this year.
Yeah, he's been playing more of a forward presser to sort of try and get the ball back high, but that link's become again in sort of our local social media because of obviously us signing Travis now, and there's a great picture of both of them having a tussle. You may have seen it online, pulling shirts, because ultimately you can only have one captain inside, and Ibu may be coming to Portman Road. You never know, but
yeah.
So yeah, no, please carry on with what your thoughts are.
And yeah, I think Travis will be an excellent addition. He was on loan with us the second half of the Championship promotion season. Didn't play many games, but when he did come in to support the Sam Morsey, Massimo Luongo pivot to fill in and came on in a lot of games to see things out. I really liked Travis, and I think he's well liked by the Ipswich fans as well. So I think he'll be a great addition. Centre halves, I'd say, are potentially a weakness that I can see at the moment. Dion Sanderson has struggled with game time, I think, and probably needs to get up to speed. Danny Batt, good header of the ball and clearer, but I think he's probably lacking a bit in the pace department.
You don't say.
Yeah. So opportunities to get him behind there. And then Matt Clark, obviously, former Ipswich player as well. They all know the league well, but I think that's probably might be where you get found out by the higher up, the stronger teams. And then I watched you against Coventry on Sky, and the keeper did not fill me with confidence, old Zetterstrom. Although since then Coventry have battered QPR 7-1, so maybe judging against a performance against Coventry is not a good yardstick at the moment.
Yeah, I would say that I said this on a previous preview show. Funny enough, to a chap from Bristol, and I was saying that we are the best team in the league up to 70 minutes. Well, we seem to do really well up to the 70th minute, and then we decide just to sort of implode and. But like I said, at the moment we're putting round pegs to square holes, and it's just
Yeah,
mixing and matching. And I think I think if you played us post international break, you'd see a different Derby County that you would genuinely fear. So let's go to the last sort of 5 minutes of the show. It's been fascinating to hear your thoughts of things. Here's the big three questions then. So who's your top three going up? Who do you see the teams that will get into the promised land? Bear in mind you've been there and done it yourself.
uh, I'm still confident enough to say Ipswich will be one of them. There's kind of a lot of negativity at the moment. Understandably, you'd probably have liked more points, but I think Kieran McKenna is a top manager and will find a solution to the problems. I think the transfer window closing and knowing what we have as a squad will be a big factor in that. I'm going to go with Birmingham. I don't think they'll be top two. I think they've got a good chance with momentum to get in the playoffs and get up that way. And then at the start of the season, I had Southampton in that group as well. I think because of the quality of the squad, they've not lost too many players. Gavin Bazunu for them worries me in goal. That's potentially their one weakness, but those would have been the three that I'd have gone with at the start of the season. I'd maybe now throw Leicester into the mix, but the only reason that they probably weren't in people's thoughts was because of the points deduction. So it depends what happens there. But yeah, Ipswich Town, Southampton, and Birmingham.
Yeah, I think that points deduction is coming, no doubt. They're just gonna. I won't be surprised if that comes in the international break. Derby's came on during international breaks, if I
Yeah,
remember correctly. So I think I'll come. So your bottom three, which I think is a little bit more obvious, possibly for one, although they're fighting like lions at the moment. Who do you see
yeah,
the bottom three being?
yeah. So Sheffield Wednesday, who I think you were alluding to there, although
Yeah,
they knocked Leeds out on penalties last night with their under 21s.
they did.
But yeah, I think in the long run, not being able to sign players or pay players and having all of those players leave will bite them. I did have Preston kind of down there, but they've definitely proved me wrong so far. Hull City, I think, were kind of the other ones that were on my radar. Again, more stability and ownership wise, it seems a bit chaotic there. And then Charlton, I think. I think they've come up at a time where there's the other promoted teams coming up with them are like looking very good and spending money. And they've got a decent squad, but yeah, I can't see them having enough about them to just get it over the line. I think they'll probably be that team that is very close to staying up, but doesn't quite get it there.
Yeah, I think Charlton will start off well and then they'll drop. I think the other one I'd put into the mix, and it's interesting that the three teams you said straight away, the three teams that everyone so far has selected. I think Preston, like I said in the show, have started off well, but I think they will drop off. I think that's purely adrenaline. I'm going to throw Oxford into the mix because I think that
Yeah,
Oxford, although we've recruited fairly well, Rowett's football, and we know about it as Derby fans, is very strong and solid. But once it does start to break, it's
yeah,
he struggles to patch it and come up with an alternative. He's very sort of direct in what he does, and he always tends to sort of have a good start in his career with clubs, and then it slowly sort of drops. I think Oxford will struggle this year. So going finally to the final question, Portman Road on Saturday. A lot of Derby fans excited to go back there because, like I said, it's a great football ground to go to. How do you see the game going, and what's your score prediction?
Uh, I'm hoping we come out of the blocks fast, like we did against Southampton. I think that will be really important. There is a bit of negativity in the fan base at the moment, so getting that early goal um, again should hopefully set us on our way. Defensively, we've not kept a clean sheet yet, so it would be nice to do that. I don't think we will. I think it could be one of those games that is nice and open, and a bit end to end. And I'm hoping that our attacking four will finally click, and find the solution that gets all of their individual talent kind of joining up nicely. So yeah, I'm going for an optimistic 3-1 victory, I think.
Wow. And a lot of Derby fans will probably expect that. I'm going to go for a 1-0 Derby win. I think that we'll just basically shut shop. We look pretty solid now. We're starting to get together. I thought we were excellent against Burnley midweek, and we were very unlucky to go out last night. So I'm confident that I think Rhian Brewster will come along and pip a winner. But finally, Adam, it's been great to talk to you. Where can people find you on social media outlets to follow you and all the great work you do?
Yeah, so it's at ITFCData on all socials, and then I do a Monday evening podcast on the Blue Monday YouTube. So that's available there. It's called Beyond the Scoreline. It does require a membership, but it's definitely well worth it. And yeah, we look back on the previous match and potentially throw in some ad hoc analysis. I looked at corner routines last week, and other things like that. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Brilliant, fantastic. Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us, and no doubt we'll return the favour when you come to Pride Park. And that's just left for me to say thank you very much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this Rams Review podcast preview show, and up the Rams.